Good evening and welcome everyone to the Maitland City Council meeting of September 23rd, 2024. If you would please remember to silence your phone. If you would like to speak at the appropriate times, if you would fill out a speaker card for us, it would be helpful. The cards are out in the lobby. The cards are also up here at the podium where you would speak from. To begin this evening, if you would please join me with a short moment of silence. Okay, thank you. And if you would please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. We have public hearings to start off. The first one regards resolution number 19/2024, ad valorem tax rate fiscal year 2025. Lori, City Clerk, would you please read the resolution title?
A resolution adopting a to be determined mill ad valorem tax levy upon all
Should be on
real
the
and
desktop.
personal property for the appropriation to the general operating expenses of the city, a 0.2020 mill voted debt service levy upon all real and personal property for appropriation to the city of Maitland, Florida, limited tax general obligating refunding note for the city of Maitland, Florida, commencing on October 1, 2024 and ending on September 30th, 2025, authorizing the city manager and or designee of the city to certify such millage and providing for an effective date.
Okay, thank you, Lori. Mark Brigantine, would you please introduce the item?
Sure. Let's just like to start off by bringing everybody up to speed on how we got to where we are tonight. Back at the beginning of the year and the first quarter of the year, we started the budget process with our internal staff reviews, putting together the budget, putting together primarily our capital plan, because you all know our capital plan goes to 3 advisory boards. Portions of the capital plan go to 3 advisory boards of the city: the Lakes Advisory Board, Transportation Advisory Board, and Parks and Rec Advisory Board, to review those capital plans before they come to City Council. That's followed up by our strategic planning session, where we get together, talk about the bigger issues that are going to affect the budget and what our priorities are. This year, a big chunk of the strategic planning session was discussion of projects and the capital projects, since we had cost estimates coming in and engineering estimates and contractor estimates coming in. They're all coming in very high, so we had to make adjustments on the fly to our capital budget to push out some projects and reprioritize the projects that were most important to the City Council. At that little gap in the arrow right here, in late April, early May of this year, we did get, as we were finalizing our budget process to get to City Council, we got news from the property appraiser's office that our taxable values in the city had decreased this year, where we had seen increases for every other municipality in the county. That was in large part due to the Live Local Act. There were also some adjustments in the office market on the west side, but the biggest chunk of that was the Live Local Act. So what we had to do just prior to presenting the City Council with the initial draft budget was to circle the wagons, go back and reevaluate where we were at, where our priorities were operationally, and how we were going to make those adjustments with a little over 2% decrease in our ad valorem revenues versus the average 10% increases we had seen over the last 10 years. What that resulted in is this table. You've seen different versions of this table throughout the budget process. This is a short-term historical trends on where we are from our revenues on the general fund side of the ledger. This year, at the proposed millage rate of 5.0465, we are projecting a little over $39 million of general fund revenues. That's broken down by several revenue sources, which include ad valorem, which you see there at the top. Just real briefly, going over the other revenue sources, our other taxes and user fees include utility taxes, gas taxes, our communication service tax, and business tax receipts, formerly known as occupational licenses. Under licenses and permits, that includes building permits, franchise fee, special assessments are also lumped into that category. The only special assessment we have out there right now is the Greenwood Gardens undergrounding conversion special assessment that still has, I believe, 6 or 7 years left on it. Our intergovernmental fund, those are federal and state grants. That's where our revenue sharing money comes into also, as well as our half-cent sales tax. Charges for services are just that. Those include EMS transport fees, school resource officers, police off-duty details, and park programs. Fines and forfeitures, again, fines and forfeitures are just that. Fines and forfeitures go to fund the training program for the police department. Miscellaneous revenue is where our investment income lives. We also have interfund transfers there, so the utility and lakes funds we'll do a transfer to the general fund for those administrative charges that are used to support those functions of the city. That includes IT, payroll, and administrative services. Finally, on this table we have our repayment from the CRA to the general fund, which I'll get into in just a second. So due to the valuation resets on the West Side Commercial District and due to the Live Local Act, the rollback rate calculation provides essentially the same amount of ad valorem taxes as it did in '24. As a higher level look at the FY 2025 budget, as I said, we had a 2.2% decrease in taxable value citywide. We had 2 Live Local Act projects. One also affected the CRA at 400 North. The other was a West Side apartment complex, so they received a 75% decrease in their ad valorem taxes that are owed to the city because they met the new criteria of the Live Local Act. When we initially presented the budget, we were just under $1 million out of balance. So our options at that time that we discussed were to transfer money from fund balance to balance the budget, to raise the millage rate, or to use CRA repayment money to balance the budget. The challenge we have this year is that we're essentially dealing with a recessionary budget where we see a decrease in revenues without any of the effects of a national or worldwide recession. So wages are still high and they remain climbing. Unemployment's low, although inflation has leveled off. It's still an issue that we have to deal with. More importantly and more costly is the cost of construction. Cost of construction has certainly outpaced inflation over the last 3 years, as well as the cost of capital purchases, primarily larger vehicles, cars, trucks, and equipment have outpaced in the inflation rate, and that's a big part of our budget. The direction we received was to use some of the money that the CRA owed the general fund to balance the budget. We did have to postpone or cancel some capital projects to balance the budget. Those are listed here. The South Keller Road project, which is a reconstruction of South Keller Road from Maitland Boulevard to the city limit near Eatonville, was pushed off to 27. The Sandsburg Road repaving project was pushed off to 26. Our Lake Lily improvements, which we budgeted money each year to slowly make improvements to Lake Lily, have been put off till 26. We put a pin in the Lake Sevilla Beach boat launch project, focused on the restroom there, rehabbing the restroom. Instead of putting that out to bid, have a contractor do it, we're going to be doing that in-house. So we're going to Kim and her folks in facilities are taking a look at the best approach to that restroom. Then the Domrick Hill sidewalks, you remember just a few months ago, we eliminated about half the sidewalks in the sewer area to help balance the budget. In terms of capital maintenance, we've eliminated the sidewalk maintenance fund for next year and significantly reduced the paving fund, the repaving fund, the money we use to repave our roads. As we have talked about, we are looking to have some funding that will be provided by a carry forward from this fiscal year From carry forward funds, those are funds that are salaries from positions that weren't filled or vacated during the year. We also have the Domrick Hill sidewalk savings that we'll be able to use to carry forward to help fund repaving and sidewalk maintenance. And we'll have to take a look at the interest income to see what we have in any excess interest income to help fund those projects. That doesn't set aside the fact that we still have some building maintenance issues on this building, police and fire. We're tracking down some leak issues to try to get our arms wrapped around that. But no matter how you slice it, next year is going to be a very tight budget year. That's not to say that we won't be doing anything next year. We have projects that were started this year, that were funded in this year's budget. They're going to be carried forward to next year's budget, and the construction will actually be happening next fiscal year. Those include Independence Lane North. We'll be working on that, getting that project underway and completed. We have the Community Park and Lake Avenue Boardwalk projects that are currently under contract. We're looking forward to the pre-construction conference there, so that'll be coming up out of the ground. For as far as sidewalk projects go, we still, like I mentioned, have the Domrick Hill sidewalks that are going to be under construction with the sewer project. And we also have the Mohican Trail sidewalk, which will also include the Deloraine intersection to make that a safer intersection. Can't forget the gateway signage. The signs have been fabricated. We're just working on the final locations and installation schedule for those. So those will be going up over the next couple months. And the West Side Trail project, which you approved about 3 months ago, that's going to be getting underway here in the next couple weeks. This is a comparison of our general fund revenues versus expenditures. The table on the left is the table that we saw just a few slides ago, just boiled down to the FY 2025 numbers. On the expenditure side, obviously personnel and operations are the largest portion of the general fund budget, and the lion's share of those personnel costs and operating costs are with the police and fire departments. Replacement capital is primarily vehicles and equipment for next fiscal year. The contributions are where we put the money to fund the library and the art and history centers. So those are funded next year. As you can see, our capital improvements program under CIP is very lean next year with $100,000 there that is left in the general fund to do to finish the length of Domrick Drive sidewalk design for future construction. The recommendation you see there is for the purchasing manager. There will be a new position added to the position table. As we talked about early on in the process, we are trying to keep this budget year as normal as possible in terms of our operations. After talking to the property appraiser's office regarding the adjustments that were made this year, their indication is that this was a one-time adjustment, not a trend. So we're hoping that we'll be back on track for FY 26 and beyond. So we're trying to maintain our funds best we can this year with the lion's share of the adjustments coming out of our capital budget. This includes funding our fund balance designations, so we don't fall behind as we're trying to move forward. So basically going over those, we're still able to fund depreciation of our vehicles and our vehicle and equipment depreciation fund, so we can maintain a healthy fund balance there. The technology fund balance designation is a fund balance designation we created 2 years ago when we found ourselves sort of up against the wall on the IT front and with police radios, where instead of trying to budget 6-7 figures in a single budget year, we've now started putting money away a little bit every budget year to take care of those larger capital costs for replacement, where your servers typically will go 6 to 7 years, radios are good for about 10 years, so instead of trying to find all that money in a single year, we're putting a little money aside every year in that fund balance designation, so we can draw that down when those are either the radios aren't supported by Motorola anymore, or the servers and the technical equipment are out of warranty and not supported. We're also showing the advance from the CRA here as moving to the general fund, and we're also adding just a little bit to our emergency fund to ensure that we keep that percentage of the total operating budget where our PIT says it should be. So, like I said, we're trying to treat this as normal of a budget year as possible and not to slide backward. I think we have gone a long ways to accomplishing that under less than ideal circumstances. At the 5.0465 millage rate, just for your information, each mill generates $3.5 million to the general fund and $361,000 to the CRA. The combined total millage rate used in this budget is 5.2485, which is 1/10, just a little over 1/10 of a mil more than the prior year's budget. At one point, at 5.1484 mils, a home with a taxable value of $500,000 will pay a little over $2,500 in operating and debt millage, compared to last year's millage rate of 4.9464. This year's proposed 5.0465 amounts to an additional $50 a year for that $500,000 house, or about 96 cents per week. So the actions requested tonight is to set the operating millage for 25 and set the voted debt millage rate for 2025. So if there are any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Okay, thank you, Mark. Does anybody have any questions, Mark? Okay, seeing no questions, oh, you do.
I'm sorry, I just wanted to ask Mark, when you talked to the property appraiser and they thought that this was a blip, based on what? I'm just curious, what was their reasoning or understanding of?
Their logic in the, if we take live local out of it,
Right.
which is a legislative anomaly versus a market-based anomaly. From a multifamily apartment complex, what they're saying is there was an adjustment made last year because with the adjustable rate mortgages that a lot of these had, those were coming due, so there was an adjustment there from their cost basis. And from a office standpoint, due to high cap rates and higher vacancy rates than normal, they felt that based upon the market that had to be adjusted downward. So that's what they told us. Not get worse. So.
All right. Let's open it up to the public. If anybody from the public would like to address this, the tax rate, now is your chance. Anybody from the public? Okay. Let's close the public period and bring it back up to council for discussion. And I just wanted to put this out there. I know that we have had a first reading on this, and the idea was that it would be, the rate should be 5.0465. Since then, I've talked to some people and had some more thoughts about it. And if this truly is a one-time adjustment, at least as far as the property values are involved on the west side, and we feel that there is some hope for us on the legislative side, in the ordinance we're passing tonight, I would suggest that I'm comfortable with where we are on our tax rate rather than raising it because of raising the entire rate, which we're probably unlikely to come back and lower it next year. Lowering tax rates is not something that's been very obvious in our history. So my suggestion would be we hold it at 4.9464 this year, and I understand that means a gap of about $348,000 at the outset of the budget year. But I imagine, as always, we're going to have carry forwards that will be coming in that will somewhat backfill that hole, and we could get through this year, see what it looks like for next year, and if it was more than a one-time blip, things are looking different, then maybe that's the time to raise the taxes rather than this year when we've already raised the fees or the services on utilities for stormwater and trash pickup as well. So that's my thought on that. Anybody else have any thoughts about this or any motion?
Well, I would be concerned with that, and I understand, it's like the backfill, but if that doesn't happen, then we've already pushed this off 1 year of doing all the roads, repaving, and I'd hate to push it off another year. I mean, if we don't get that covered, I'd rather be safe and know that we can get these done, and then next year, I mean, if it not, we'd have to raise it up that much next year. So it's the chances of it just filling itself aren't that high. So I would be happy with the 5.0465.
Okay, anybody else?
No. All right, that being said,
I agree, Bob. What's the chances of being able, I agree with John about the tax sort of establishing rates. What's the outlook that you have about having carry forward that would be able to fund that gap based on carry forward of 2024?
Well, we're not going to be able to fill the gap. All we're going to do is backfill some. I'm guessing we'll probably have close to maybe $1 million that we can designate to this. We still have to take a look at our pension liabilities for police and fire to make sure we have money in that designation to fill that. So we will certainly have money. Will it be the $1 million that we had budgeted the last 2 years for paving? No, it'll probably be significantly less than that, but we'll get some paving done.
So with even it staying at the 4.9, you're saying we will have some carry forward that we'll be able to put towards it, right?
Yeah, we always have some carry forward.
Sorry, didn't you were about to say something?
oh, I was just going to make a motion. I'd like to make a motion to set the operating millage for fiscal year 2025, tax rate 2024 as 5.0465, which is equal to the rollback rate.
I second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Lori, would you please read the roll?
Councilmember Guthrie?
Aye.
Councilmember Wurzel? Aye. Councilmember Hall Harrison?
Aye.
Councilmember Wild?
No.
Mayor Lowndes?
No. Okay, carries.
Next motion is to set the voted debt millage. As you recall from our previous workshops, we maintained this millage rate. We had some reserves in that fund to be able, so even though we had a property tax decrease, which would have typically dictated a increase in this voted debt millage, we had enough in the reserve fund within that to keep that at 0.2020.
Okay. Any discussion on that?
I'm happy to make the second part of that too, if you'd like.
Okay.
I'd like to make a motion to set the voted debt millage rate for fiscal year 2025 as 0.2020 for a combined total millage rate of 5.2485 mils.
Second.
Thank you.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Lauren, please call the roll.
Councilmember Hall Harrison?
Aye.
Councilmember Wurzel?
Aye.
Councilmember Wild?
No, because I think it doesn't make sense to vote no on the first and not yet. So
Councilmember Guthrie?
Aye.
Mayor Lowndes?
No. Okay, that carries as well. We have next on the agenda here, a resolution regarding the 2025 annual budget. Lori, would you like to read the resolution title?
Resolution of the City of Maitland, Florida, adopting the annual budget for fiscal year beginning October 1, 2024 and ending September 30th, 2025, appropriating funds for operating expenses, supplies, personnel, and otherwise appropriating funds for the efficient and effective operation of government of the City of Maitland and all its operations and functions for the fiscal year ending September 30th, 2025. providing a means to amend the said annual budget so as to carry forward the funding of purchase orders, work orders, and grants outstanding as of September 30th, 2024. Providing a means to amend the said annual budget to reflect grants received after September 30th, 2024. Authorizing the transfer of funds herein appropriated so long as the total combined appropriations shall not be increased thereby. Adopting the revenues and expenditures and the position authorization table, adopting the ad valorem property tax millage upon the assessment roll for the tax year 2024, adjusting the ad valorem property tax millage rate, and providing for an effective date.
Okay, thank you, Lori. Mark, would you like to introduce the item?
Sure. Yeah, I just want to go through some of the other funds that make up our budget as a reminder of what's going into those. The first is the utilities fund. Our capital outlay in the utility fund is just under $2 million this year with 3 design projects. As you are all aware, our water treatment plants are in need of upgrades, so we're going to be doing the design for plants 4 and 6. So we can schedule those for rehab to get those running at top performance before we have to take plant 5 offline and do a total reconstruction there. So we need plants of our 3 plants. We need our 2 other plants, which 6 is our workhorse. I mean, that's the one that does most of the work. So we have to have both of those running if we're going to be taking one of our other plants offline to reconstruct and update it. We also have our lift station 17 force main design, which has been in the capital budget now for the last 5 years, just being funded now in 25. And the North Keller Road sewer expansion design, which is that line that runs up North Keller Road and ends at the Altamont Springs water treatment or wastewater treatment plant that treats our wastewater from the west side of the city. Our operating expenses are $10.4 million. The biggest chunk of that is personnel costs, but we also have wastewater treatment costs at Iron Bridge and Altamont Springs treatment plants. The city of Maitland does not treat its own wastewater. We contract with Altamont and the city of Orlando for that, as well as the transmission authority that gets our wastewater from the east side of the city to the Iron Bridge plant, the South Seminole, North Orange County Wastewater Transmission Facility Authority. We also have some debt service built into the utility fund budget. Once $1.8 million, with 1.4 being principal and 463,000 being interest. This year, we have the bank loan that we've been paying off from 2015 for various utility projects, but we also have debt service from our state revolving fund loan. Since phase 1 of the 1792 water line has been closed out and completed, we now have to start repayment on that loan, so that's built into the utility fund budget. From our August 5th presentation, we did have some minor updates I'd just like to highlight here, and those are highlighted in green on your screens. Starting in the upper left corner, the wastewater revenues increased due to our revised and increased Domerick Hills connection. Since they're coming into the phase 1 project, our revenues are going to be showing an increase there. And that corresponds to the increase in operating revenue subject to debt coverage. So those matriculate through the revenue side here. Going to the upper right-hand corner, our debt service and interest and other expenses, those 2 lines there. For debt coverage calculation clarity, we split out the issuance costs, which are now sitting in the other. Those are basically your closing costs on the loan. We don't include the issuance costs in the debt service calculation, so we broke them out here for clarity to show that that's not part of the calculation. We also revised investment income. We revised this to be consistent with the general fund assumptions that we use, so we're consistent across the entire budget. On the assessments line, some of the Domerick sewer assessments are being paid up front in 2024, so we revised this downward for 2025. We'll still end up getting about $1.9 million total through the life of the assessment. As far as debt proceeds goes, we have funding sources for capital outlays, but they're probably going to require additional loans, so we'll probably be going back to the state for SRF loans to accomplish our capital projects, so we accounted for that in that line. As far as the capital outlay line goes, we have some reduced, that's been reduced for the Iron Bridge improvements from our funding reserve. The way our agreement with the City of Orlando works is that if we're going to be treating our water at Iron Bridge, there are certain capital projects that they have to do to keep their plants up and running. We pay a small share of that to them. Their capital projects have been running behind. They've been experiencing sort of the same problems we have with costs being much higher than they were anticipated, so those are running a little bit behind, so our portion has been reduced. As far as debt service principal, as I stated, due to the 1792 Phase 1 getting split off by the state and being completed early, as we work to Phase 2, we're starting to pay debt service on that Phase 1 water line. But as you can see at the bottom, we are still maintaining our debt service coverage ratio requirements. Those are some changes that we've been working through since we talked about the enterprise and special revenue funds on August 5th. Moving to solid waste fund, we have a little under $3.5 million in our solid waste fund. The vast majority of this is contractual services at $2.5 million. That's our solid waste recycling hauling with Waste Pro and disposal at the Orange County and Seminole County landfills. We also have some other operating costs. We have administrative costs in this fund because we still handle customer service here for the solid waste fund. We still have materials and supplies, and we also have payments in lieu of franchise fees, and we also maintain a fund reserve. So that's our solid waste fund, which is pretty straightforward. In our stormwater environmental fund, that's again a little under $2.5 million. Our capital outlay next year is going to be $600,000 in the proposed budget for replacement sweeper and additional compact sweeper. Our personnel costs are a little over $500,000 with our operating costs at $1.3 million. Those operating costs include chemicals, a lot of drainage repair and maintenance. We do contracted street sweeping occasionally during the heavy leaf fall in the autumn. Everything we pull out of our systems has to go to the landfill, so there's solid waste disposal and the other costs associated with the operations of that we went over during the Special Revenue Fund workshop. This is a voted debt millage. That's going to be $813,000 this year. Those for the construction of City Hall, police, and fire stations. $595,000 of that is in principal payments, and $218,000 is in interest expense. So that's sort of the 10,000-foot view of our other funds within the budget for 2025. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Any questions for Mark? Okay. Any public comment? Let's open the public period. Anybody have any comment on this? Okay, we'll close the public comment period. I'd just like to say thanks for pulling us through another season of budget, and congratulations to all the department heads and everybody who's worked so hard on this for the last, well, probably all year long, but certainly for the last couple of months. It's been a very intensive thing for you all, I know, and I just want to let you know I appreciate it, and we all do.
Yeah, and I think you got the thank yous backwards. I think the first thank you should go to the department heads and what they had to do this year, which was extraordinary. They feed me the information, and I try to present it in a fashion that makes sense to everybody. So it's really most of it goes to them.
Okay. Thank you all back there. Thanks for keeping Mark on task. Is there any further discussion?
I just want to say I ran into Liberty outside and I was talking to her, and we're really filling a lot of positions here at the city. So kudos on that too, Mark, good job. Good news and bad news, we used to be able to go, all right, we didn't have those positions, so we could use that money. So, you know, but we needed those people, so that's fantastic. So good job. That's it. I just wanted to give kudos on that.
Thank you.
Okay. Anybody else? Any motions out there?
I can make a motion to approve Resolution 13-2024.
Is that resolution number correct,
Yeah, we
Lori?
have a- there's a
I think it's
typo
20.
there.
Yeah, I think
It
yes.
should be 20-2024.
Yeah, that's fat
Is
fingers.
So,
Is that the only correction I need to make? Okay.
yeah, the title is correct, I think it's just in the body of it,
Yeah.
the body of the motion requested is.
Oh, I see, yes.
Yeah.
Resolution 20-2024, adopting the general fund budget of $39,671,000, utilities fund budget of $14,653,000, solid waste budget of $3,498,000, and stormwater environmental utility budget of $2,492,000, voted debt service budget of $813,000. It's an Amber Alert, and position authority table for FY 2025, testing my math ability to read numbers.
And I will second that very long motion.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Laura, would you please call the roll?
Councilmember Warzel?
Aye.
Councilmember Wild?
Aye.
Councilmember Guthrie?
Aye.
Councilmember Hall Harrison?
Aye.
Mayor Lam?
Aye. Okay, let's move on to public hearing for ordinance number 1430. Laura, would you please read the ordinance title?
Ordinance number 1430, an ordinance of the city of Maitland, Florida, finding that Orange County has been identified as having a certain surplus of available affordable housing pursuant to section 196.1978, subsection 3O, Florida statute electing to opt out of providing the ad valorem tax exemption under section 197.19783D1A Florida statute to be eligible properties providing for conflicts and severability and setting an effective date.
Okay, thank you, Laura. Mark, would you like to introduce the item, please?
I'd just be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Okay, does anybody have any questions on this proposed ordinance with Mark? Okay, would anybody from the public like to comment on this proposed ordinance? Open the public comment period, and
I got it.
seeing no takers, we will close it. And if there's no further discussion, the motion will be in order.
I'll make a motion to adopt ordinance number 1430, enacting the opt-out provision of chapter 196.1978 as presented.
Okay, we have a motion.
I'll second.
And a second. Laura, please call the roll.
Councilmember Wild?
Aye.
Councilmember Guthrie?
Aye.
Councilmember Hall Harrison?
Aye.
Councilmember Warzel?
Aye.
Mayor Lam?
Aye. Okay, moving on to ordinance number 1431. Laura, would you please read the ordinance title?
Ordinance number 1431, an ordinance of the City of Maitland, Florida, amending Chapter 6, Fire Protection and Prevention, Article 4, Fire Protection Facilities and Services Impact Fee, providing for revisions of fire impact fee assessments according to specified use categories, providing for an update of rates for fire impact fee assessments, providing for codification, providing for severability, providing for conflicts, providing for an effective.
Okay, thank you. Laura, Mark, would you like to introduce the item?
Yes, just real briefly. First of all, there's been a revised ordinance placed in front of you. There were some minor edits that were picked up on as we were moving from introduction to adoption. These edits don't change the title of the ordinance as it's been advertised for tonight's hearing. If you take a look at the changes, and this sort of relates to one of the ordinances coming later tonight, we referenced zoning districts that are currently in the Code of Ordinances. But there are old zoning districts, so We have struck those. Those are going to be corrected with the introduction and hopefully adoption of the ordinance later this evening. So what we've done is just struck the zoning district references and just used the language for any building or structure that, unless it's otherwise exempted, will pay these fire impact fees because they don't relate back to the land development code anymore. The second change is we have typos on the implementation years. The existing fees will go into effect in FY 25 and 26, not 24 and 25. So, and the effective date will be December 22nd, 2024, if adopted this evening. So, if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions or more? Don't see any. Does anybody from the public, let's open the public comment period. Anybody from the public like to comment on this ordinance number 1431? Seeing none, let's close the public comment period. And if there's no further discussion, the motion will be in order, but just so we're clear, I guess the motion would be to take into account what you just read as further revisions to what was. Okay.
Yes, sir.
I'll move to adopt ordinance number 1431, amending City Code Chapter 6, Fire Protection and Prevention, Article 4, Fire Protection Services Impact Fee, with effective date of December 22nd, 2024, as presented with the modifications, amendments as presented.
I'll second.
Okay, motion in a second. Warren, please call the roll.
Councilmember Guthrie.
Aye.
Councilmember Hall Harrison.
Aye.
Councilmember Wurzel.
Aye.
Councilmember Wild.
Aye.
Mayor Lyons.
Aye. Okay, it's adopted. On to old business. Mr. Reagan, any old business?
No, sir.
Okay, let's recess the city council meeting and convene the CRA meeting and welcome our CRA member, Teresa Jarrett, who's here. I'm sure she's happy to be here with us this evening. We're happy to have her. Okay, we're sitting now as the CRA. We have a consent agenda. Public hearing. Oh, you have a public hearing to start that off? Okay. Whoops. That's all right. Let's open a public period. Anybody from the public would like to be heard on the CRA issues of the evening? Okay, let's close the public period. So now we have a consent agenda. Does anybody want to remove anything from the consent agenda? Are we all good with that consent agenda? Okay. Carry forward with that consent agenda. Is there anybody from the public who has any comments on consent agenda items 2 and 3? Seeing none. We'll close the public comment period on that, and the motion will be in order.
Make a motion to approve the consent agenda for September 23rd, 2024.
Okay.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Laura, would you call the roll, please?
CRA member Guthrie.
Aye.
CRA member Hall Harrison.
Aye.
CRA member Wurzel.
Aye.
CRA member Wild.
Aye.
CRA member Garrett.
Aye.
CRA chair Lowndes.
Aye. Okay. Let's move on to the resolution number 22, 2024, fiscal year 2025 CRA annual budget. Laura, would you please read the resolution title?
CRA Resolution 22-2024, a resolution of the City of Maitland, Florida, adopting the Community Redevelopment Agency budget for the fiscal year beginning October 1, 2024 and ending September 30th, 2025, appropriating funds for operating expenses, supplies, personnel, and otherwise appropriating funds for the efficient and effective operation of the CRA, providing a means to amend said budget so as to carry forward the funding of purchase orders, work orders, and grants outstanding as of September 30th, 2024, providing a means to amend the said budget to reflect grants received after September 30th, 2024, authorizing the transfer of funds herein appropriated so long as the total combined appropriations shall not be increased thereby, adopting the revenues and expenditures, and providing for an effective date.
Okay. Mark, would you like to introduce that item?
Sure, just briefly, I didn't prepare an extensive presentation on this because the CRA budget this year is pretty straightforward. We have a little over $2 million coming into the CRA, $2.194 million coming in, with $1.194 going to the operating budget, which is a lot of that goes to debt service and some minor operating costs, with the repayment of the advance to the general fund of $1 million. So we're sitting on the money in the CRA that's currently in the fund to fund the capital project, which the primary capital project is going to be Independence Lane. So we're sitting on that money, awaiting GMP contractors, a contract for that project that we'll bring forward to you when that's ready to go.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions of Mark? Okay, we're going to open up the public comment period on this for the CRA annual budget. Does anybody from the public have any comment on this? Okay, seeing none, let's close the public comment period. And if there's any discussion, we can have it, or if not, the motion will be in order.
Okay, I make a motion to accept the resolution number 22-2024, fiscal year 2025 CRA annual budget.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Laura, would you please call the roll?
CRA member Hall Harrison.
Aye.
CRA member Wurzel.
Aye.
CRA member Wild.
No. Yes. Sorry.
CRA member Guthrie.
Aye.
CRA member Garrett.
Aye.
CRA chair Lowndes.
Aye. Okay, we have the annual budget. Thank you.
I just want to say thank you to Mark because we were able to meet before the meeting, so I was fully aware of what we were voting on. So I appreciate it. Thank you.
Yes, great. Well, thank you for coming. And thank you for serving us. Okay, let's adjourn the CRA meeting and reconvene the city council meeting. And back as the city council, let's open up the public period. Wait, okay, yes, we have to send that first, I'm sorry. The consent agenda. Does anybody wish to remove any of the items from the consent agenda? Seeing none. Let's move forward. Does anybody from the public have any comments on consent agenda items 3 through 8? Seeing none, let's close the public comment period, and the motion will be in order if anybody would like to do so.
Move to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Motion and a second to approve the consent agenda. Lori, would you please read the roll? Call the roll.
Councilmember Hall Harrison.
Aye.
Councilmember Wurzel.
Aye.
Councilmember Wild.
Aye.
Councilmember Guthrie.
Aye.
Mayor Lowndes.
Aye. Okay, now let's open a public period. Does anybody from the public like to address anything that's not otherwise on the agenda this evening? Now is the time. Love to hear from you. You have a taker.
Yay, Stacy.
Yay.
Here so often, I just like to give everybody else dibs first. I'm Stacy Larson, I'm the director of the Maitland Public Library, and I would like to cordially invite everyone to attend our Fall Festival. That will be on Saturday, October 5th at 2 o'clock. This is a new direction for us. For about the last decade, we've done a storybook tea party, just previously a fairy tale tea party. Before that, it was a princess tea party. So we want to do something different. There will be no tea involved at the Fall Festival. Instead, we're going to make apple cider from scratch and have caramel corn, fall crafts, fall games. We will be pinning the smile on a jack-o'-lantern, for example. We've got lots of fun crafts coming. A photo booth will be graced with some woodland fairies coming to visit our event. And there will be a costume parade at 3 p.m. The site will be determined by the weather that day. So I hope everybody comes between 2 and 4 for your costume for the parade at 3, Saturday, October 5th. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Stacy. Anybody else? Okay, let's close the public period and move on to decisions. Ordinance number 1432, introduction. Laura, would you like to read the ordinance title?
Nothing more.
All right.
Ordinance number 1432. An ordinance of the City of Maitland, Florida, amending ordinance number 1411 in direct relation to the capital improvements program, Table 1, amending the governance and implementation element of the Maitland Comprehensive Development Plan 2035 to replace Table 7.1, capital improvements program, to recognize the annual update of the City of Maitland 5-year CIP, amending the CDP relating to the Orange County Public Schools to recognize the annual updates of the Orange County Public School 10-year capital outlay plan and providing for an effective date.
Okay, Mr. Rankin, would you like to introduce that?
Certainly, this is primarily ministerial now that the budget's adopted. The CDP requires that we have a 5-year capital plan included in it, so we take Table 1 from our budget, drop it into a comprehensive plan, show we have a financially feasible 5-year capital plan. We also, by reference, adopt the 10-year school plan, although we're not responsible for it. It goes into the plan.
Okay, all right. Does anybody have any questions of Mark? All right, let's open the public comment period. Anybody from the public like to be heard on this item? Seeing none, let's close the public comment period. And if there's no further discussion, the motion will be in order.
I will make a motion to set the operating millage for fiscal year 2025 as 5.0465, which is equal to the rollback rate of, am I on the wrong one?
You did that one.
How about,
Yeah, go ahead, somebody take it from here.
I think what he was trying to say.
Yeah, go ahead, you got me.
He's going to move to introduce ordinance number 1432 to approve
That's the
fiscal
one.
year 2025 to 2029 capital improvements program, including revised Table 1, update Table 1 within Chapter 7, governance and implementation element, capital improvements sub-element of the 2035 CDP, recognize the annual update of the 5-year CIP, and recognize the annual update of the Orange County Public Schools 10-year capital outlay plan as presented, and set a public hearing date for October 14, 2024. If I was wrong on that, you let me
Maybe
get
the
through
best
that.
motion I've ever heard.
Hey, listen, I'm kind of glad I didn't have to read that one, so thank you for taking it that long.
But you could second it.
Yeah, I'll second it,
All right.
man. Thanks.
Have a motion and a second. Let's see, motion and a second. Laura, please call the roll.
Councilmember Wurzel? Aye. Councilmember Wiley?
Aye.
Councilmember Guthrie?
Aye.
Councilmember Hall Harrison?
Aye.
Mayor Lowndes?
Aye. Okay, moving on to the next ordinance, ordinance number 1433 we're introducing. Laura, would you please read the ordinance title?
Ordinance number 1433, an ordinance of the City of Maitland, Florida, amending the Land Development Code, Section 2.5.2A, Site Plan, Section 2.5.4D, Appeals to City Council, Section 4.2.3A, Household Living Uses, Section 4.2.3B3, Healthcare Uses, Section 4.3.4A, Air Conditioner Compressor Unit, Table 5.2.5A, minimum number of off-street vehicular parking spaces, Table 5.14.6C2, non-residential and mixed-use development sign standards, permit required, Section 6.2.3 Parks and Recreation Sites, Section 7.1.9 definitions, Section 10.2.3 lots and yards, and Section 10.3 definitions, providing for codification, severability, conflicts, and an effective date.
All right. Thank you, Laura. Mark, would you like to introduce the item, or just go to Dan?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I wish my presentation would be faster than the title, but we got a lot to cover here tonight, so we'll go through this fairly quickly for the introduction. So the purpose of this ordinance is kind of a refinement. We do this about every 6 months, go through, make little adjustments. So we're refining the land development court in accordance with the state mandates and planning trends that have come up, as well as best practices. So there are several changes, as Lori read into the record. The site plan review is to provide for a process for a minor deviation from an approved site plan to address any kind of technical issues that usually come up during permitting. To qualify for that, it would have to be an agreement upon the community development director and the public works director to qualify as being minor, and they cannot materially alter any drainage, streets, or other engineering design or adversely impact stormwater quality or quantity. They also cannot substantially affect the term of the original approval and do not result in any adverse impacts to the surrounding city. So that's the first section. The second one is amending section 2.5.4D, appeals to the city council. This is just adding the short-term rental certificate, giving them an option to appeal. It wasn't in the ordinance. Somehow the short-term rentals got out of any kind of appeal process. In case we deny a permit and the applicant wants to appeal it, or vice versa, we approve it and the neighbors want to appeal it. So that provides for that process would come straight to council. Next section is 4.2.3B3, healthcare uses. This is to codify an administrative interpretation that was made about 8 months ago with a freestanding ERs classifying them as the same as the outpatient care facilities as the principal uses in the permitted use table. So it's just simply codifying that we've been operating under that administrative interpretation. And we go on to section 4.3.4A with air conditioning compressor units. And that's to remove an incorrect side yard setback that's been in the code at 7.5 feet in the RSFD zoning district, which actually setback is 5 feet. So we're just correcting that error. Next section is 4.2.3A1, classification of principal uses. And you'll see this come up a little bit in a dwelling unit within a professional office. We're replacing the word housekeeping unit with living unit. The housekeeping unit is it's a common planning term, but it's kind of outdated. So you'll see this come up a couple times tonight as we're replacing it where it's found in the ordinance. The next section is table 525A, minimum number of off-street parking spaces. So the existing code has the required visitor parking spaces in multifamily units as 0.1 space, and it's currently calculated per resident. We want it should have been calculated per unit because it's really hard to measure how many residents are going to be in a future apartment complex. So that was just a Scrivener's error that we found that we wanted to correct. Additionally, amending 5.1 or 5.14.6C2, non-residential and mixed-use development sign regulations. This is allowing for multi-tenant office buildings with a shared entrance to get one 60-foot sign per building frontage. If you're multi-tenant with entrances, then you get a sign per tenant, but when they're in a single entrance, like a big office building, you don't want all those signs everywhere, so it's limiting to 60 square foot sign per building frontage. We also are amending section 6.23, parks and recreation sites, for parkland dedication in residential subdivisions to exempt those that are 10 lots and under. 10 lots is basically where we separate the minor subdivision from the major subdivision. Most of the subdivisions that we have left in the city are going to be 2 and 3 lots, and it really didn't make sense to try to ask somebody to dedicate parkland on a 3-lot subdivision. They're still going to be contributing to the impact fee, so they're still contributing to the citywide park system, but it didn't make sense on these smaller subdivisions. So also amending section 7.119, mobility fees, again, definition of dwelling unit. For the purpose of mobility fees, we're replacing housekeeping unit with living unit for consistency. And section 10.2.3, lots and yards, to clarify that the street side yard frontages apply to fences in all zoning districts. Currently, it was only in the RSF3, and I don't think that was the intent when we adopted the code. It was supposed to be for the fences in all the side yard zoning district setbacks. However, structures are only in the RSF3 district, so if you had an accessory shed or something like that, it would still apply in the RSF3 district. Also, we are amending the section concerning definitions to add a definition of dwelling unit to include a room or rooms connected together constituting a separate independent living unit. and physically separated from any other rooms and dwelling units which may be in the same structure. This came about because we've had some issues with dwelling units, with the accessory dwelling units, people wanting to build an accessory structure to the house, but they have it set up just like it's going to be a rentable unit. So we researched a lot of the jurisdictions around us, came up with a good definition that's consistent and defensible. So also amending the minor structure definition to remove the word home. Currently they only allowed for minor structures in a home in a residential district, but we want to also include it in residential and non-residential districts, because there are some non-residential districts that do have minor structures like a shed for their lawn equipment or things like that. So it just made sense. The last one is amending the definition of observation deck. This was another one of an administrative interpretation that was codified, but when we were codifying it, we didn't remove the word boat and prohibition of freestanding canopies and screened areas. This is to allow, different from a boat dock, this is kind of an observation deck where people can go out in the lake and just sit there and enjoy the nice view. We do think that it should be allowed to be screened, and we did remove the word boat because it was never intended for it to be a boat dock. There would be no moorings of any kind of boats at all on that. So with that one, on June 20th, P&Z unanimously recommended to forward this proposed amendment to council with a recommendation of approval. The original draft had the housekeeping unit in it. P&Z recommended changing it to the living unit. Staff agreed with that and therefore made those consistent in the rest of the amendments tonight. So with that being said, staff is recommending that council introduce ordinance 1433, amending various sections of the code and the LDC, and set the public hearing and action date for October 14th, 2024. With that, I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you, Dan. Does anybody have any questions of Dan? On this item?
On 5.25, was there any thought that on the per resident instead of dwelling unit, that it would be, if it's a 1-bedroom, 2-bedroom, 3-bedroom, is that the equivalent? Because under this one, it looks like it's all treated the same.
Yeah, it's
Was there
per
any
unit.
thought- Go ahead.
So when an apartment comes in, if they're doing 300 units, we know how to calculate the overflow parking for visitors, rather than trying to guess how many residents are going to be in there.
Right. So instead of doing it by resident, though, if you did it by per bedroom, because under a dwelling unit, any dwelling unit is counted the same. I'm just asking if there's a need for the distinction or not, because when I saw the per resident, I thought, okay, you were trying to guess, or trying to some equation as to how many people are there, and obviously it says a studio versus a 3-bedroom
Right.
unit, the chances of visitors may be, I don't know, increased, but I'm not sure if that's part of this equation or not, if you've seen that elsewhere, but it doesn't seem like you're just treating every dwelling unit the same, and if that's the case, then that's fine, if that's what's practiced, or if there's a need to count it actually versus who's there, which would maybe a bedroom would be.
Common practice is per unit. So we just went with what's typical around the community.
Okay, any other questions? All right. It's public comment time. Would anybody like to comment on this proposed ordinance, or the introduced ordinance? Okay, let's close public comment period. If there's no further discussion, the motion will be in order.
I would move to introduce ordinance, well, am I moving to introduce it? To introduce, that feels like the other Lori's job sometimes. All right, I'm moving to introduce ordinance 1433, amending Article 2, Article 4, Article 5, Article 6, Article 7, and Article 10 of the Land Development Code, and to set the public hearing and action date for October 14th, 2024.
Have a motion?
Second.
There's a second. Lori, would you please call the roll?
Councilmember Wild,
Aye.
Councilmember Guthrie,
Aye.
Councilmember Hall Harrison,
Aye.
Councilmember Wurzel,
Aye.
Mayor Wellens.
Aye. Okay, introduced now to ordinance number 1434, also introduction, amending the land development code. Lori, would you please read the ordinance title?
Yes, ordinance number 1434, an ordinance of the City of Maitland, Florida, amending the Maitland Land Development Code, Article 5, Development Standards, Section 5.6, Residential Tree Protection, clarifying the differing purposes of the minimum tree quantities and removal and replacement standards, providing for conflicts, severability, and an effective date.
Okay, thank you. Mark, would you like to introduce the item, or is this going to Dan again?
They're going to get shorter as it goes on from here. So the purpose of this amendment is to clarify certain language and standards in the residential tree protection section of the Land Development Code. So what the proposed changes are is that it changes the section of residential tree protection to include the title minimum tree quantities, and it amends section 561, the purpose to include incorporating the minimum standards of trees. So it switches the order of 561 and 562 to make it more applicable for 561 as you go down and reading the ordinance. In 562, the required minimum tree quantities, it clarifies the minimum diameter planting at 3 inches DBH and clarifies that a property owner is required to replace a tree if the removal causes the number of trees to fall below the minimum. It also clarifies the minimum tree standards and qualities at the time of planting, and it adds language to section 563 applicability to include that except otherwise provided by state law, to include the state preemptions for tree removal on single-family lots. It also revises section 564, tree location and replacement, to clarify when a specimen tree is removed, then the applicant is required to relocate or replace the similar species on the one removed, and or they could use one on the approved Maitland tree stock, which will be adopted by resolution when this comes back for adoption. And it also further defines the payment in lieu alternative when impossible or impractical to replant on site or relocate. And so that goes to the Public Works Director or designee to make that determination. So again, this one went to P&Z on June 20th, 2024, and they unanimously recommended to forward this amendment to council with a recommendation of approval. And staff is recommending council introduce the ordinance 1434, amending section 5.6 of the Land Development Code, residential tree protection, and set the public hearing and action date for October 14th, 2024.
Okay, thank you, Dan. Does anybody have any questions of Dan on this item? All right. Let's open up the public comment period for proposed ordinance number 1434. Anybody in the public have any comment? Seeing none,
I have one comment.
Oh,
I want to
please.
get a copy of the full ordinance.
Would you mind stepping up to the podium, sir? That way we can catch your comment on and be amplified.
Rules. My name is Bob Fulcar. I live in Maitland, 1504 Fields Drive. How do we get a copy of the ordinance,
Of the tree ordinance?
of the tree ordinance?
You
We'll
go
be
to
happy to send it.
beautycode.com, or Dan can give you a copy of that.
Okay, that'd be great. We come from St. Simon's Island, Georgia, where we have a major issue with trees, trying to maintain trees versus open development that was occurring.
Right.
So we'd be interested in this.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
Yeah, I was on P&Z way back in the day when we drafted this thing,
Yes.
and then lots has happened in Florida since then. The legislature took away our authority to regulate trees, basically, and this has more of an incentivizing aspect to it than anybody else, any other public comments? Okay, let's close the public comment period. If there's any discussion, we could have it. If there's not, the motion will be in order.
I'm happy to make a motion on this one because I love trees. So I would move to introduce ordinance 1434, amending the Land Development Code, Article 5, Development Standards, Section 5.6, Residential Tree Protection, and set the public hearing and action date for October 14th, 2024.
Do we have a motion
Second.
and a second? Lori, would you please call the roll?
Councilmember Hall Harrison.
Aye.
Councilmember Guthrie.
Aye.
Councilmember Wild.
Aye.
Councilmember Wurzel. Aye. Mayor Lau.
Aye. The Okay, we're in the home stretch here. We have ordinance number 1435, introduction. Lori, would you please read the ordinance title?
Ordinance 1435, an ordinance of the City of Maitland, Florida, amending the city code to address consistency issues related to the implementation of the Comprehensive Land Development Code. Update adopted in 2022, amending Chapter 17.5 Communications to update references to other sections of the Land Development Code to conform to the comprehensive update, providing for codification, severability, conflicts, and an effective date.
Okay. Thank you. Dan, would you like to introduce that?
Absolutely, and as Lori just stated, this is Chapter 17.5 of the Communications of the City Code, and what we're doing here, as Mark indicated, is we're replacing the old Land Development Code zoning districts with the new ones. When this was adopted, or when the Land Development Code was adopted back in 2022, it references zoning districts. The Chapter 17.5 of the Code of Ordinances, the City Code, were not updated at that time, because we were focused on the Land Development Code. So what this does is just replaces the old zoning districts with the new ones that were adopted in 2022, as well as a couple references to the sections in the Land Development Code. We updated those to match the correct sections now. So with that being said, staff recommends council introduce ordinance 1435, amending Chapter 17.5 Communications of the City Code, and set the public hearing and action date for October 14th, 2024.
Okay, thank you, Dan. Does anybody have any questions of Dan? All right. Does anybody from the public like to be heard on this? Now is the public comment period open and closed. If there's no further discussion, a motion will be in order.
I'll move to introduce ordinance number 1434, amending the Land Development Code, Article 5, Development Standards, Section 5.6, Residential Tree Protection, and to set the public hearing and action date for October 14th, 2024.
Next one.
Oh, shoot. My goodness.
We agree with you, by the way.
I move to introduce ordinance 1435, amending Chapter 17.5 Communications of the City Code, and set the public hearing and action date for October 14th.
Thanks for taking that friendly amendment.
We're there.
Yeah.
Okay, you have a second.
I seconded it.
Okay. All right. You have a motion in a second. Or please call the roll.
Councilmember Hall Harrison.
Aye.
Councilmember Morrison.
Aye.
Councilmember Wild.
Aye.
Councilmember Guthrie.
Aye.
Mayor Loud.
Aye. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dan. All right, we got through that. Thank you, Lauren, for your yeomanlike work on reading all those ordinances and resolutions. We are to the point in our meeting where we ask the city attorney, does he have any reports?
And I'm at the point where I disappoint everybody by saying no.
Okay. City manager?
No, sir.
No. Clerk?
No.
Nothing. Well,
Oh,
introduce.
yes, we have our new deputy city clerk sitting in the back, Ryan Keane. I'd like to wave at him. It is also his birthday, so.
Oh, happy birthday, man.
Happy birthday, Ryan. Yes, you're almost released.
Ryan's buying them.
He insisted on spending it with you.
Okay, anybody, council, have any questions? Anybody? Nothing? Okay. Well, then we are adjourned.
After a disappointing performance by the Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
Yeah, man. Quickly, now I heard to be here a little while.
Yeah.
You know what's funny is that every year since I've been, I have been sad. Tickets for